listening to the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing and Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit Kolo, and I'm here today with just me. This is a solo cast to kick off 2019. Here we are, January 3rd, 2019. And this episode is a big one, and I'm so excited to share all of this with you. So I have a pretty big announcement regarding this podcast that, like I said, I'm super excited to share, and I hope you will be as excited to receive it. Here's the thing. This podcast is changing. Yeah, I just said the change word. And it's funny because I sat down to record this episode like 7 times. And I don't know what it is about the idea of change that makes me feel like I need to record this episode in some certain way and deliver the information so no one freaks out. Like, honestly, all of this change, all that I'm going to tell you about in this episode, I could not be more excited about. Seriously. I am so happy and thrilled and grateful to be changing this podcast and really changing so many things about my business and how I'm choosing to shift and use my energy in the world. And that's what this whole thing is about. So yeah, the podcast is changing. So hey, to the new listener, if this is the very first time you're listening to this podcast, you're like, wait a second, I've never even listened to this. What's changing? I have no idea what it was like. Well, you can always go back and listen to any of the previous episodes. There are, if I'm counting right, there are 89 of them. I think this is 89, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Somewhere around there. Lots of episodes, okay? So you can always go back. Those episodes will always be here. But starting today, and really starting next Thursday, the podcast episodes will be quite different. So here is what's coming at you. As a listener, here's what's happening. You don't have to do anything different. This podcast, if you're subscribed already at wherever you're listening to this podcast right now, as long as you're subscribed, you're good. You're going to get a new episode next Thursday. It's going to sound a little different. It's going to have a different name. It's going to have a different cover art picture on it, but it'll download just like it always does. And I sincerely hope you love it. I already have a major feeling that you will, but you don't have to do anything about these changes. This is just what's happening. So yeah, the name of the podcast is changing. The cover art is changing. The content is changing. So how? Why? What's going on here? So this podcast, as it stands right now, January 3rd, 2019, it's called the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast. And over the next week or so, as my editor and producer, Dave, gets in there and makes some changes, from here on out, be called the Marketing Personalities Podcast. That's right. I'm shifting everything over to the newest, really, the latest arm of my business called Marketing Personalities. And I'll go into kind of why that's happening in just a minute, but that's what's happening. Marketing Personalities is the thing that I'm leaning 100% into, focusing my energy on, and I'm letting go of the Marketing and Yoga Pants brand. So there you go. Again, you don't have to do anything. if you're subscribed, you're just going to get a new podcast episode next week. It's going to have a new intro, a new outro, same music. Can't let go of that cool little beat that we all know to be my beat. But yeah, new intro, new outro, and the content is going to definitely shift. So I'll talk about what the content's going to be, but let's just kind of rewind the tapes and think back on how we got here. Okay. If you've been here from episode 1, amazing. Holy smokes. Thank you for listening and subscribing and being around for that long. If you just started listening or anything in the middle, let me just kind of take you back and kind of underline the pieces in this journey that have brought us, all of us, here together to this point. Okay. So it was 2017 when I decided to start a podcast. I had started my business in August of 2016. I was doing marketing work. I was basically building a marketing agency, and I was doing marketing for businesses. Kind of quickly realized that wasn't my favorite thing in the whole world. And so I then shifted in early 2017 to doing more marketing coaching than actually doing the marketing for people. Okay. So that happened early 2017. And at the same time, it was about like late March, early April 2017, almost 2 years ago, I had just gotten through my first winter. I live in Pennsylvania. It's winter. Okay. Cold in the winter months, snowy, bleak, gray. All right. And I had just gotten through my first winter being a at-home business owner. I wasn't going out to a job every day. I was staying in my house for months at a time, basically. And winter was really, really hard. I felt super isolated. If I'm being honest, pretty depressed. I lived by myself at that time, and I was just like in the very beginning of the business, and I was just working really hard and just all of it. And by the end of winter and early spring of 2017, I was really feeling not great. I felt super isolated. I was really craving community. And so I started dreaming up a solution to my own problem, and it was building my own community. And that's how Marketing in Yoga Pants came to be. I decided that I was going to start having more focused and deliberate conversation with female entrepreneurs. And that would fill me up because I would be able to have these conversations that I was wanting to have. Me, little old me, isolated in my house in the middle of winter, just completely lonely and without great conversation. So I was going to be able to have these conversations with these women, and I was going to hit the record button and be able to share them with other people who might also feel kind of isolated and alone and slogging it out. And like we say, top knot, yoga pants, hunched over our MacBooks, trying to figure all this out on our own. I didn't want us to have to do that alone anymore. And so Marketing in Yoga Pants, the podcast, was born. And at the same time, I opened up a private Facebook group, totally free to join. And it was specifically for those of you who listened to the podcast. And I would invite our podcast guests every week to jump into the Facebook group and engage with all of us. Again, building this community, building conversation, and creating space for that conversation. And man, if I'm being honest, I'm really proud of myself for doing that. I'm so grateful that I did that back then. It's funny, I usually, when I think back on the shifts and things that I've made happen over the years in my business and even before my business, a lot of times I'm just so in the moment making it happen because I just believe in the vision that I've latched onto, that stuff just happens. Like I just do it and I put it out there, and then it's like, okay, yeah, and so now I have a podcast. Okay, cool. Meanwhile, other people are like, how did you just do that? Like, I don't understand. That has happened so many times in my past. And that was definitely how the podcast came about too. I had the idea like late March. I want to say like March 25th or something like that. And I started recording the episodes the first week of May 2017, and the podcast launched June 1st, 2017. Sweet. And then I just kept going, a new episode every single week since then. And then my business, aside from marketing and yoga pants, continued to shift and change. I started coaching more and more people. And over time, I want to say really, we kind of get to the end of 2017 into 2018, and I am full force. I just want to coach everybody. Coaching was my number one focus. And the podcast was kind of over here on the side, just like doing its own little thing. I didn't build it to feed my coaching business. I could have, but that's really not where my head was when I built marketing in yoga pants. I built it for the community, truly. That is why I did it. And so it was kind of doing its own thing. And I had most of my focus over here on trying to get new coaching clients and setting myself up for a really great 2018. And then early 2018, something wasn't clicking. Something just wasn't clicking. I was recognizing that while I was really enjoying my time with my coaching clients, there were a lot of shoulds around marketing that just were rubbing not only my clients the wrong way, but they were really rubbing me the wrong way. I just saw so many people not wanting to market. Even my clients who had me there to truly hold their hands and make the strategy and guide them to the best and easiest and most feel-good way to implement it, it still was a struggle. And I couldn't help but just know in my being and in my soul that there has to be a better way here. And I've shared more about how I really shifted in 2018 in episode 73. So if you want to go back there and really understand what happened to make this pretty massive shift occur in 2018 for my business, go back to episode 73, because I go into deep detail, and I won't do that again here. But long story short, I recognized some patterns in my clients. I recognized that their personality type, something that I was always intrigued with, and I always asked right up front, as soon as somebody became my client, I would ask them what their personality type was, so just to understand them better and be able to coach them better. And I started recognizing that, wait a second, this personality type thing, this gives me a really unique piece of information about what marketing tactics and strategies and tasks will feel good for this specific client. And I started connecting the dots. I recognized, hey, this client over here who is an ENFP, she's really good and she really loves doing this thing. But meanwhile, this client who, on the surface, she's kind of like this other person, but I know her personality type is ISFP, pretty different from an ENFP. And you know what? She's really good at this other thing. And she really likes doing this other thing, and it's working for her. And on the surface, like I said, they could be seen as, hey, you're pretty similar people. Just go ahead and do this one marketing thing and it's going to work for you. No, two totally different personalities, two totally different marketing strategies. There's something here. And I continue to connect the dots. And that's where Marketing Personalities was born. The newest, the youngest, I guess you could say, arm of my business. And as I put all that together, if you've been around for a few months, you've seen this evolve, you've seen this happen, you've probably gone to marketingpersonalities.com and found out what your marketing personality type is. And it has just hit such a chord with people. I receive so many emails about how this information is resonating with individuals who felt like marketing was just the bane of their business existence before. And now it's like this thing that's really not that bad and totally working for them. And I receive emails about how it's validating them, validating what they've been doing and supporting them to make better, more aligned decisions now and into the future. And it's just all this really great stuff culminating all at once. So we come to, it was August 2018. Okay. So just a few months ago. And I had just launched Marketing Personalities. And remember, so we've got three things going on here all at the same time. We've got brand new marketing personalities really striking a great chord with people. We've got Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast happening, kind of doing its own thing. It's just kind of like systems are working. I'm showing up every month to record some episodes. And then after that, they go out and it's like magic. And then I have my coaching business, Jam Marketing Group, right? And I'm coaching individuals over there. And in August 2018, I recognized through a lot of internal searching, listening to my intuition, my inner voice, and masterminding with my mastermind group, that marketing personalities is really where it's at. That's really where my calling and my purpose here, at least in this phase of my life, that's where it's at. I mean, it's one of those things that's hard to describe because it was such an internal knowing and not an external thing that I could pinpoint on a spreadsheet or explain. It was just that's it. Like, that's the thing all of this prior work has been building me toward, and I don't want to squander that. Okay. So that was August. And then by the end of September 2018, I was really sensing the stress that I had put on myself, not only to take October off, the entire month of October off to get married and go on a honeymoon and just take some time off, but also I had these three entities going all at once and everything was happening. I mean, no balls were dropping. It was totally fine. But I had, again, this internal knowing that this wouldn't be forever. And I gave myself the time and space in October while I was away to simply not think about any of it and come back and hopefully identify what really needed my energy, because I felt very split. I felt very split in my focus, my energies, and I didn't love that. That didn't feel great for me at that time. And so I gave myself space to ponder that and listen and get quiet about it and just see, okay, well, when I come back in November, how am I really feeling about this? And I came back in November and it was super, super clear that marketing personalities was the thing that I needed and wanted and was being called to put my energies into. And therefore, I was being called to surrender my other two brands to allow for marketing personalities to really flourish and blossom and become the thing that I know it's going to become. So I declared it with my mastermind group. They're always the first ones to kind of get my stuff. And I said, listen, marketing personalities is the thing. Now the task is to identify, what stays and what goes. Of all the things that are going on right now in my business, what needs to be rebranded and be brought under the marketing personalities umbrella? And then what things can simply be let go of? Okay. And so for the past few months, that's been my focus, really identifying what stays, what goes, and why, and making sure that everything that stays has a super, super clear purpose in the business model and in my life, right? Because I'm the one driving the ship here. So I decided that the Jam Marketing Group and the Marketing and Yoga Pants brands would be no longer. I would let those brands go. And that brought up an interesting thing. Well, but then what happens to the podcast, right? It was a very easy question to answer for me. You guys know, right? I'm an ENFJ. I'm a pretty self-assured person. I'm a J. I'm a judger. I can make a decision pretty quickly. I'm also an intuitive feeler. So as long as I give myself the moment, the quiet moment to drop down into my intuition and just listen and hear that voice, as long as I connect with that, I can make the decision pretty easily. And that's what I did. And it was easy. It was the podcast stays. Okay. The podcast stays. I love the podcast. If we want to talk about marketing that feels good, the podcast is marketing that feels good for me. I can get behind this mic and for crying out loud, I don't know how long I've been going for right now, but I mean, you guys know I can get behind a mic and talk. And it feels super good for me to communicate with you in this way. And so the podcast was definitely staying. But then I had to, navigate, if the podcast is staying, what is changing about the podcast, if anything? And the answer was the podcast will exist, but it will no longer exist under the Marketing in Yoga Pants name. It really has to be brought underneath this Marketing Personalities umbrella to be an asset to the Marketing Personalities brand and company that I'm building, and continue to be congruent asset to the listener, right? I mean, that's the whole point. That's the whole point of anything that you do in your marketing or your business. Let's make sure that it's congruent and it's all working toward the same thing. If you've got, and there's no fault to it. And obviously I just went through my whole origin of all of this. There's no fault in having different focuses, especially in the beginning. I've been at this business thing, this full-time business thing for just over 2 years. That's not that long. Does it feel like a long time? Yeah, sometimes. But then also I think about it and it's like a blink of an eye. 2 years is nothing. Okay, so I definitely give myself grace, and I give you grace if you're kind of still in that, whether you've been at this for 2 years or 22 years or 200 years, for crying out loud. Like, if you're in that place where you have that split focus still, that's fine. And also, different personality types do that better than others. So, hey, there's no fault in doing that. For me, I recognize that that was a season of having those split focuses, lots of experiments going on, trying different things, seeing what stuck. And now my whole being knows that it's time to focus in and send my best energies toward Marketing Personalities. So that's what we're doing. So the podcast is coming underneath that umbrella. The name is changing. My podcast editor and producer, Dave, is going to go in there in the next week, change the name, change the cover art, okay? As long as you're subscribed, you don't have to do anything. It's just going to change. You're just going to see a new picture and a new name. That's all. And then you'll get a new episode next Thursday, just like you always do. The content is definitely going to change as well. You'll hear a new intro and a new outro, right? And the conversations that I'm going to be having are going to be much more focused on the personality type that we are choosing to dive into for that episode. Okay. And I'm aiming to bring on guests that can speak directly into that specific personality type, because that is their personality type. I've already done a couple of these interviews. Okay. And as a personality assessment nerd, as we know, like obviously I am, because this is what I've built, it lights me up to get this deeper, more intricate, and just honest, vulnerable look into this other human's psyche. Honestly, it's endlessly fascinating for me. Endlessly. Super cool to recognize and see this other human that I'm having a conversation with, and getting to see the world for just a few moments like they see the world. So endlessly cool. And to put the cherry on top of that experience, I get to hit a record button and then share that with you. And so you can get just yet another behind the scenes peek into a world and a perspective from someone who may have the same personality type as you do or may not. And as I always say, I feel like I'm broken record. Personality types are not rules. They are trends. They tell us some things that we already know about ourselves, and they provide incredible amounts of validation and support when we're trying to live our lives. as this person, as this human that we are. And when we can get a peek into ourselves, I believe our businesses and everything related to our businesses improves. And then when we also take it yet another step forward and commit to understanding those around us in a deeper sense, a new light, whatever, however you want to view this, every single one of us gets better. Our businesses get better. I guess on the ground level, we as humans get better. Our businesses get better. Our companies get stronger. Our industries get bigger. And if you could see me, I'm not recording any video right now, but my hands are just like flying all over right now because this is just so cool. We all get better from this conversation of becoming more self-aware and also becoming more understanding, more knowledgeable, and hopefully more accepting of those around us. In this context, yeah, we're talking a lot about business and marketing, and specifically relating to someone's personality type. This is an even bigger conversation, right? You can see that. It's an understanding. It's an acceptance of differences because they're all so cool. That's what we're going to talk about here on the podcast from here on out. And so I'm going to be having these conversations with fellow business owners, really focused on those personality types. And I'm also going to jump on the mic solo a lot more often and bring you what I consider to be super valuable, helpful insight about these personality types. Okay, so I do plan to get on here more solo style, more often, and give you the insight, give you more and more insight into this stuff. Because if I've learned nothing over the past 6 months, it's that this stuff lights you up too. And hey, maybe I am. I'm definitely not the only one. I've talked to so many people who self-identify as a personality type assessment nerd. And I am raising my hand, friend. Me too. And this podcast will be a place where we get to really nerd out on this stuff and learn more and understand more and accept more, and then ultimately implement what we're learning, understanding, and accepting, right? Because just like anything, it's one thing to talk about doing something, and it's one thing to learn about doing something. And it's one thing to think about doing something, and it's a whole other situation when you actually start doing it and putting it into play, right? And so this podcast is also going to serve as a bridge between you knowing that you can create a marketing strategy that feels good, and then you actually going out and implementing that marketing strategy that feels good. Again, the more of us who do that and choose to lean into that which feels good in our marketing and in our business, the stronger we become as humans, because we're showing up as we were always meant to and always called to do. Our businesses get stronger, and the companies that we're building, they get stronger too. So that's what we're building. That's what we're doing. In the next week, the name and the cover art is going to change. All of the episodes that have already aired as the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast, they're going to stay right here. They're going to have the same intro, same outro. It might be a little confusing for people who haven't been with us for a while, and then they come in and they're like, wait, I thought I was listening to Marketing Personalities. Why are they talking about yoga pants? That's okay. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Yeah, so all those episodes are all going to be here. So if you're just tuning in, kind of a new listener, and you still want to go back and listen to those episodes, I'm telling you what, there is a lot of interesting conversation that has already been had on this podcast. And that's exactly why I don't want to get rid of any of that. None of that is negated. It's all still incredibly valuable. And now we're just shifting and talking about something a little bit more focused and still bringing you really interesting, great conversation and content. So there you go. That's what's happening. Now, on the other fronts, right? Because I've got the coaching, I've got the podcast, I've got the marketing personalities. It's truly all coming underneath this one umbrella. And I've been, ever since I came back in November from my sabbatical, I have been actively working to bring everything under that umbrella. And so while I am still doing a bit of coaching, very limited, I only have just a few spots. They're always taken because I only have a few spots now. I'm doing a little coaching for the unique situations that come up, but really the energy is for marketing personalities. And even in the coaching, that's what we're talking about, right? It's all about that. Find the marketing that feels good and go all for it. And so all the energies coming under that one umbrella, and I'll continue to do that. It's funny, like even though 2 years isn't very long, there are a lot of little pieces out there. And so it's been an interesting auditing process of finding all the places that need to be updated, and all the decisions of like, does this stay? Does this go? All of it. So I'm still very much in the midst of that. But, oh man, it's a good ride. It's a worthwhile one. I don't know that I've ever believed in something so much. I think when it comes to businesses, and I don't know really what to call it, I for sure believed that I needed to leave my job and start something of my own. I didn't necessarily believe in the thing that I was building so much, as much as I do marketing personalities. You see what I'm trying to say there? I knew I had to leave and get out of corporate. I knew I had to build something of my own. And now I feel like 2 years later, I'm like, oh, okay, so all of that stuff that I was doing before, like that wasn't actually the thing. Those were just stepping stones to now. And then even further, I believe that this marketing personalities is yet another stepping stone. I'm going to learn so much. I already have, but just so much about everything in building marketing personalities and creating this thing that I've dreamt up in my head. And yet it's just another stepping stone. I'm just taking that next step, and we'll see what else it comes up with as I commit to it. So that's that. I could go into all of the other things that I think I have planned for 2019, but I have to say the planning experience for 2019 has looked very different compared to years past. I'm learning to loosen my grip on all those plans and all those things the mind really wants to put forth and set, and learning more to surrender to what's already coming my way, accepting that, receiving that, and believing it to be exactly what I need. So, sure, I could go into even more details about how I see things changing in next year. And yeah, I mean, sure, right now as I sit here, I have some visions. I have some things that I think are going to happen, and definitely some projects on the horizon that I cannot wait to bring to you. But that's not the point here. The point here is to share with you where we're at currently, how darn excited I am about all of it. So you can be brought into that and get excited as well. And then you and I, we're going to take the next step forward, and we'll see what comes next. But right now, hey, thank you so much for being here. It's 2019. Okay. As if you haven't gotten enough like reminders through Instagram and other podcasts this week, but it's 2019. We're in this together. We're here. I wanted to say we're doing it, but are we? I don't know. I mean, we're here. We're in this together. We're going to take the next step forward. We're going to learn and have conversations about so many interesting things in the coming months and years, even on this podcast. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And I really can't wait for you to listen to the next few episodes so you just get a taste of what's coming to you. Like I said, I've already recorded a few of these episodes, and they're just so delicious. Oh man, I just love them. They're just so good. if you ask me. A little biased, I know, but I dig them. So I can't wait for you to listen in. As early as next Thursday, January 10th, new episode will be in your podcast app, just like always. It's going to sound a little different, but it's going to be great. And we're going to be talking about, just to give you a heads up, we're going to be talking about one specific personality tribe. There are 4, okay, right? So there are 16 personality types, and then they're chunked into 4 categories. I call those categories tribes. And next week, I'm bringing on a business owner who is an ENTJ, and she's part of the analyst tribe. We're going to be talking about the analysts, that whole tribe of analysts. Those are our INTJs, INTPs, ENTJs, and ENTPs. Okay, so we're sitting down and just having a really unique, deep look into this one tribe of these 4 personality types, and we'll see where it goes. So that's what's coming next Thursday. And then over the next few weeks, I deep dive with other people into all the other 3 tribes that we have. So some good stuff coming your way. I cannot wait to hear what you think about that new content. But before we even get there, again, thank you for being here and listening to this episode. And I am always super curious to hear what you think about these new changes. So here's what I want you to do. We've decided here in Marketing Personalities Land to obviously get rid of the Marketing and Yoga Pants Instagram account, because Marketing and Yoga Pants is no longer here, right? So we're now on Instagram as Marketing Personalities. And that's really where all those conversations that used to happen in the Facebook group, it's going to happen on Instagram now, because you know what? I like Instagram a lot better. And if we're going to be doing marketing that feels good, we're going to go be doing it on Instagram. Okay? So instead of hopping over to the Facebook group, that Facebook group, don't worry. I mean, it's going to be archived, but it's not that big of a deal. Instead of going over there to conversate about what we've been talking about on the podcast, you're just going to hop over to Instagram. You're there all the time anyway. So, I mean, just hop over there. Follow me at Marketing Personalities and send me a direct message, or take a screenshot of your podcast app right now, share it in your stories, tag me, and let me know what you think about these changes. Are you excited? Are you dreading it? Do you think this is the worst? No, I don't think you think that at all. But let me know if you're excited, just like I am. I can't wait to hear from you, and I cannot wait for you to hear next week. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you over on Instagram, and we'll be back next week, just like always, but totally different. So we'll talk to you then. Bye.